Tail of it, right? So holding onto the tail. Say the blessing with me. Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Dayan Ha'emet. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, Creator of the universe, Judge of truth. Amen. The custom is to wear the ribbon for 30 days. If you wear it, on Friday night, take it off for Shabbat, and you put it on Saturday night through the 30-day period.
For services.
Yes, please speakers. And then I have to ask a question. Are we Zooming?
Yes.
So are Josh and David and Ellie on Zoom? Do you know?
You just have a seat, Rabbi, already started.
Did I not get the names right? Josh, Dave, and Ellie. She doesn't go by Ellie? Okay. Okay,
That's okay. That's okay.
Ellie. She's kind of today. And they are on Zoom. You want me to acknowledge them? I was just going to acknowledge my nieces and nephews. I think just nieces and nephews, because I go beyond that and leave somebody out.
You just want to see. You just want to see.
Relatives and friends, as we begin our services, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them in a silent mode.
Esa Enai El Harim, Me'ayin Yavo Esri, Esri Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz. I will lift up mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence shall my help come? My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. God will not suffer thy foot to be moved. Heaven that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, heaven that keepeth Israel doth neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy keeper upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall keep thee from all evil, and keep thy soul. The Lord shall guard thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and forever. Those were the words of the 121st Psalm. And it's customary to begin moments like this with the ancient words of the psalmist. And perhaps The best known and the most beloved of all the Psalms is the 23rd Psalm. And that we have been reciting for nearly 2,500 years. And each time we offer these words, it is with the hope that they will bring a measure of comfort and consolation in the face of your loss. So, Andy, for you, Stephen and Michelle, for you, Lauren and Ken, for you, Ira, for you, and for Joshua, who is joining us electronically, and Dave and Haley, who's joining us electronically, and Ilanit, and Dave, and Ari, and Stacy, and Drew, and Hannah, and Benjamin, and Ellie, and Zeb, and everyone here, cousins, family, and friends. I offer these words again in the most familiar translation, and again with the hope that as you hear them, they will bring you a measure of comfort and God's presence in the face of the loss of your dear sister, and your aunt, and your cousin, and your neighbor, and friend, and Andy, your dear Dorothy. And surrounded by family, I hope these words will bring you a sense of comfort. Mizmor LeDavid, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Might the psalmist have had Dorothy in mind across the centuries, perhaps except for one statement? I think you would agree. Dorothy had not an enemy in the world. As you all know, whatever room she walked into, she was the nicest person in the room. So you all must have the most wonderful memories. And you're picturing her in your mind's eye, and you're hearing her voice, and you're seeing her smile, and you're watching her, and you're loving her, because she loved you. But in truth, it's not my words that are the most important words today, it's what you have to say. It's what you've been sharing these last days since she moved from this world to the Olam Haba, to the next world. It's what you've been sharing with each other. It's your stories, it's your words of love and tribute that are the most important. And so for today, to begin that narrative that will continue for the rest of your lives and your children's lives, way beyond today. Stephen will call upon you first, and then Ari, and you'll come up with whichever of your children wants to join you, and then Drew.
Dorothy will be missed by Andrew, her husband, Lauren and me, her siblings, nieces, nephews, grandnieces and nephews, family, friends, and acquaintances. Her passing is not only our loss, but a loss to everyone who knew her. Dorothy was the most kind and generous person I've known. Most older siblings are not always kind to the next youngest in the family. Not always universal, but usual. Dorothy was not that sort of older sister. To give you an example, when I was 3 or 4, I was offered a lollipop after getting a haircut. I asked the barber for one for my sister. Our mom was so taken that I would think of my sister, she told everyone of my gallant act. After basking in the light of motherly love for a few minutes, I realized that this act of kindness of my part was so unusual as to warrant notice. While Dorothy's constant love, attention, and kindness was so routine, it was hardly remarked upon. Even at that young age, I realized I had a sister who was kind and loving beyond the normal sibling. She showed the same care and love to my children as they grew up, and her grandnieces and nephews also benefited from her immense love and care. She would always bring books and art supplies when she saw them, and would spend countless amounts of time reading and drawing with them. Of course, she still never forgot me or Lauren, and when she came over to the house for dinner, she would frequently bring some wonderful libation in the form of a single malt or bourbon, which she herself would enjoy with us. She never forgot anyone's birthday, and she was the one to keep in touch with all her cousins and extended family. She was a very talented artist, and our home features some of her artwork. Many of you may not know that after gaining her master's, she trained as an anaplastologist. We used to call them prosthetists, but we changed the name because of some linguistic confusion. She was very adept at creating artificial eyes. And when she worked at the VA as an anaplastologist, she would make 2 eyes for each patient. She had one patient who wanted the second eye to be his drinking eye. He told her that he drank his good eye, got bloodshot, and didn't match the one that she made. So, of course, she made him another eye to match his drinking eye. Because that's the kind of person she was. And of course, both of them were a work of art. Dorothy, you will be missed by your family, your friends, and everyone who knew you. My daughter, Juanita, her niece, was not able to be here, and she asked that I read something that she wrote. Dorothy was a real special aunt. She was kind, generous in soul, a wordsmith competitor who could really party. Growing up, she would come for every holiday, birthday, and other special occasions. Her gifts were epic. It was so clear she really thought about who we were as people and what we wanted. Also taking into consideration a unique, cool, or unexpected gift. We got interesting museum puzzles or cool science-related activities way before that was a thing to give kids. Art projects, interactive mind toys, always something fun, but also stimulating. She wouldn't just give the gift. She would also help us play with it and put it together. Though if it was a competitive game, she would never let us just win. She was a board game competitor extraordinaire. As I am our family's worst speller, I did not typically participate, but at the family gatherings there was usually a hot game of Scrabble between my grandma Dorothy and others, likely to lose to their prowess, and Ari and later David. Winning at that game really made for some great bragging rights, though usually the gold went to Dorothy. But even when she would win at Scrabble, she was always saying, "Great work, nice go, good use of the W." Dorothy could also really have fun and party. At all the family simchas, she was out on the dance floor having fun. Her joy was really infectious. She would be with the first group of horror dancers and keep boogieing for the night. And of course, she was a woman who would celebrate with a taste of single malt, often the peatier the better. I feel so lucky to have Dorothy as my aunt. She lived her life in a joyous manner with an artist's eye. She saw the whole kaleidoscope of colors playing out. I see some of it in my daughter Lila as she draws and paints the world with joyous colors. We love you, Dorothy, and we thank you for the love you shared with us.
Right.
So the Lubavitcher Rebbe says that we're all placed upon this earth, and our neshama placed within a body to fulfill a mission here on this earth. And it's not always readily apparent what that mission is. No one tells us what we were here to do and what we were here to accomplish. And we have to figure that out. And even as we move through our years, it's not always readily apparent what we're here to do and what we're here to accomplish. And that's part of the avodah chaim. It's part of our labor of life to figure out what our mission is. And like my father said before me, Dorothy, her entire soul, her embodiment, her character was wrapped up in kindness and generosity. And she was a natural teacher who took young children by the hand. Some of us were not very well behaved young children. And tried to engage with us and teach us things and make us use our minds and focus. And as a teacher, she was really outstanding. I think that she probably knew this, that one of my great passions and loves is the English language. I write a lot, and it was a great motivator to learn vocabulary to beat Dorothy in Scrabble. As a 5 and 6 and 7-year-old, I would study the dictionary for particularly good Scrabble words to come back and beat Dorothy in Scrabble, because she was really a extremely competitive but very kind competitor for me. I think we played hundreds, if not thousands, of games of Scrabble and cards and Monopoly, and all of those things that we did together, in later years I understood was extremely formative, and how she would teach us, math and vocabulary and strategy through those games that we played together, always encouraging us to do our best and try hard, but never letting us win. And Dorothy also imbued our lives with art. Dorothy was a really talented, really talented artist. We have a lot of her art in our house that we can look at and appreciate her eye and her talent, the skill that God gave her. And whenever we have guests, I always point out to my guests the art that Dorothy produced, because it's beautiful. It's gorgeous work that she had done. And as I grew older, I always encouraged her to, pick her brush back up and make art because she was so talented. As a child, on those family get-togethers, and sometimes when not often, but the few times that we stayed with my grandparents and Dorothy would be there, Dorothy would read us stories. And one of those things that she did for us was she curated those stories that she provided to us and to me and my siblings and my children. And some of those stories are, they're out of print, but they're great books. The Green Machine, The Forgotten Bear, I don't know if you know these. The Cat Who Thought He Was a Tiger, personal favorite. And The Secret Toy Machine. These are all incredible books, and they had a great impact on my life. I still, when I read them to my children, I always think about the probably hundreds of times I asked Dorothy to read those books to me. And she never said no, she was too busy. She always said sure. And I would sit next to her, or when I was smaller, sit on her lap, and she would read me these books over and over and over again. Her kindness, her generosity of spirit, her compassion for me as a fidgety, not always well-behaved child was really a tremendous blessing to me, and continued to be so into adulthood and for my children, who really formed, I believe, a very special relationship and a bond with Dorothy, because she was just that type of a person. She made everyone feel special, and she allowed everyone to enter that circle of her compassion and her generosity. And it meant a lot to be there. It meant a lot. It was really a gift from Hashem. I just want to recount just one or two more things. So I've been around the world a couple of times. I've been to many places. Wherever I went, Dorothy would contact me or send me an email and say, "What can I send you?" She was always sending me care packages wherever I went, whether that was at Camp Ramah as a little kid, or Bangladesh, Singapore, Iraq. She always sent me packages, and it meant so much to me. That was her way of reaching out through distance and time, and showing her love and her caring for me, to do something kind. And she always sent me things that I enjoyed, whether it was, like my grandmother, she would cut out articles from the newspaper that she thought I would enjoy. And she would also, in more recent years, send me coffee. And my Aunt Lauren also would send me coffee. And in 2019, I spent most of the year away, but 6 months of that year I was in Asia, mostly based in Singapore, working on behalf of the Indo-Pacific Command. I was a company commander, and I had teams spread out over 5 countries across Asia, so I traveled a lot. And we worked 7 days a week. I worked 7 days a week for 6 months during that period. And we consumed a lot of coffee. And one of the times Dorothy and I chatted, she asked me if she could send me something, and I said, yeah, send some coffee. And she ended up sending me, in one package, there was 20 or 25 pounds of coffee. But good coffee, Lavazza and other Italian coffees that she had curated and picked out for me lovingly. And then she would send it to me in 5-pound increments. And after months of this, and I would go, we had a break room in our headquarters. It was a joint task force, so I was commanded by an Air Force colonel. It was actually one of the first joint task forces I've ever really served in And so this colonel would always come in the morning. I would be there earlier, and he'd come in and he'd take a big cup of coffee. And one morning he found me in the break room grinding the beans that she had sent, because she knew I liked, not ground, just send the beans. So I would grind the coffee in the morning, and the colonel said to me, he said, "Have you been making this coffee for all these months?" I'm like, "Yes, sir, I have." He's like, "Where did you get all this coffee?" And I said, "Well, my aunt sends it to me. She sends it to me, like every other week." And he said, "Oh, we need to do something about that." And I was like, "Oh, write me a note for your aunts, and I'll sign it thanking them for their generosity. We were a very well-caffeinated task force." We were working hard, and everyone, it's not often in a situation like that you have majors, field grade officers making coffee, but I really felt that it was an extension of Dorothy's generosity and her caring and her kindness to make all the other ladies and gentlemen that were working in this task force, some pretty high-powered people in that unit, the coffee, and all of them would ask me who sent this coffee, and I would tell them my aunt did, and they were just blown away with her generosity. And I don't think that that's uncommon. I don't think that being amazed at Dorothy's generosity, her compassion, her kindness, the gifts that she gave on birthdays and Hanukkah, and the things that she did for you as an individual and made you feel special, I don't think that was uncommon. I like to think that she loved me the most because of her patience for me, and her inordinate patience and kindness, because I was a little mischievous and not always well behaved, as I said, but she was really kind and generous, and she loved me in a way that I appreciated deeply. And what was even more of a blessing for me after I had my children was the lengths that she went to form those similar relationships with my children. And she reached out to them and were very involved in their lives. And as Dorothy's health declined, I know that my kids really felt it was hard for them. It was very hard for them. And I know that particularly Hannah and Benjamin tried to reach out to her and cheer her up and talk to her. And we'll all miss her very, very much. Thank you.
True.
Well, I'm one of Dorothy's cousins. I can't remember a time when Dorothy was not a part of my life. Growing up, our extended family was pretty big. Had many annual events. My parents' Memorial Day barbecue was a staple. Our annual summer week at Uncle Abe's farm was a highlight. And of course, all of our mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, weddings, etc., etc. Dorothy, as you heard, never missed one of them. Never, ever, ever. She was one of those solid oak constants that grounds a family. You could always count on her being there, and you could always count that upbeat karma, that smile, and those big, beautiful eyes that light up the room. Dorothy was about family, in case you haven't figured that out. She knew what was going on with everybody in the family, like everything, because she genuinely cared about what we all were doing and how we were doing. This past week, my cousin Robin sent me a picture from a picnic at her house roughly 50 years ago, with me sitting with Dorothy and Walter and Big Sal chatting behind us. For friends, those not in the family, we had 3 Sals, so we had to distinguish them from each other as Big Sal, Little Sal, and Little Sal, in order of age. There was another kid in the picture. Neither Robin nor I could figure out who it was. My first thought was Dorothy would know. And that second, Robin texted Dorothy would know. In the past 7 years that Dorothy was being treated and followed at Johns Hopkins, Suzanne and I really got to spend time with Dorothy and Andy. Visits to one's oncologists are generally pretty stressful, but when Dorothy was with us, she was with family and she was happy. It was a mini vacation with a chance to see family, chance to eat out, a chance to party, and incidentally, there was that radiation therapy stuck in there. For one thing, it really gave her time to update us in exquisite detail on everything going on with the cousins. True to her modest self, she always wanted to know what we were up to, and really only talked about herself when we asked. Even then, we had to find out from Andy. I knew that Dorothy painted, but far more than that, that one of her sculptures was shown in a museum exhibition. They were really amazing. They were really creative. She made a beautiful one for Suzanne and me called The Circle of Life. On one follow-up visit to Hopkins, our institute was doing a big wine tasting, and I invited Dorothy and Andy to join. Everyone, of course, there knew each other except for Dorothy and Andy. As you can imagine, Dorothy jumped in, chatting with everybody. It was really she that made it a special event. When that wine tasting party came up many times, everybody's first comment was, "It was so great to meet your cousin." Mind you, there were about 70 people there. I don't know how in 3 hours everybody there seemed to get to know her somehow. It was great to meet your cousin. How's she doing? Please send our best regards. And finally, we got to know Andy. From that, I realized that Dorothy's patience got her the husband she deserved. Caring, intelligent, down to earth, great values, and most importantly, totally devoted to Dorothy every day of their 25 years together.
Ari, no doubt, you and Stacy were her favorites. But, speaking on behalf of Ari, Josh in Oregon, you were her favorite. And David and Haley in South Africa, you were her favorite. And Ilanit and Dan on the West Coast, you were her favorite. Because you were all her favorite. What a unique person who can make everyone and anyone feel as if they were her favorite. Andy, how fortunate that your blanket was next to her blanket at Tanglewood, that you could convince her, although it didn't take much convincing, I suspect, that that would be the beginning of the most wonderful relationship that would take you all around the world, and especially get in the car and go, and those road trips, but most importantly, would take the two of you heart to heart for 25 years. 25 wonderful, miraculous years that also had to be 25 difficult, challenging, and immensely draining years. Yes, she was a great artist, no question. Yes, she loved to garden, loved to paint, loved to sculpt. Yes, she loved to go and do and see, and had immense curiosity and a sense of adventure. But perhaps most importantly, she had great strength and fortitude, because as you well know, she was a survivor against all kinds of odds that perhaps a lesser person would not be able to conquer. Ari, you spoke of the Rebbe's instruction that we all have a mission. Perhaps her mission, perhaps Dorothy's mission, was to be for you and every life she touched that role model, that dugma, that would teach tikkun olam, the repair of the world, putting the broken pieces of the world back together, as she no doubt had to struggle to do for herself. And those courses of treatment that perhaps for a lesser person might have conquered, but didn't conquer her. She knew how to live. She knew how to live. And of living, she made an art. And perhaps her mission was to show you what she could see in you and in the world. Because isn't that the purpose ultimately of the artist? The artist is compelled to take the world as they see it and transform it through their artistry into something you could see or hear or feel, so that you understand and observe the world as they, and perhaps appreciate it that much more. She knew how to live, and of life she made an art. Death conquers life. But every physician, every healer knows that death can conquer life, but it cannot vanquish love. And love is what is eternal. And love is ultimately what she gave to each and every one of you, to each and every human being she would encounter in the world. She had courage, she was strong, and she persevered. And that which is good forever. I once learned an important lesson, because I like to paint too. I like to do art too. I once wrote an essay called The Rabbi's Artist, because every time we get up to open our mouths, some of us think, perhaps this is my way of demonstrating my artistry in times of joy and in times of grief. And what did I wish to teach? That the greatest art an artist can produce is their life itself. Not their work, but their life. And that each and every one of us has the ability to make our lives a work of art. And Dorothy did just that. Yes, you have her pictures, and you have her pottery and her sculpture, but you have her artistry as a part of your soul, as a part of your spirit. And that was her greatest work. She observed, she produced, she comforted, and she inspired. And she leaves this world better than it ever would have been without her. It leaves you, Andy, and each and every one of you, leaves you better because of her ability to repair the world. One patient at the VA hospital at a time, one family member in her presence at a time, one neighbor, one stranger, one human being, perhaps one horse and one alpaca at a time. Because you probably know she loved all creatures, but had a special love for horses and alpacas. Who knows how her presence, even for a moment, might have affected them. You know how her presence has affected you. Her imprimatur is on your heart and in your soul. And you are blessed, not just fortunate, but blessed to have lived your life with hers. By all accounts, in the world in which we live today, given the miracles of modern science, too short a life. And yet, no matter how many years she walked the face of the earth, her gift was her artistry, and her artistry was her love. May her soul rest in peace, her memory assured, and her legacy, the legacy of the artist who made an artwork of her life, live on as a role model for you. Amen. We rise for the El Mole Rachamim. El Mole Rachamim shochen במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. לנשמת דבורה בת גרשון, שהלכה לעולמה, בעל הרחמים יצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of Devorah Bat Gershon, who has departed from this world. Lord of mercy, bring her into thy presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou her possession, and may her repose be peace. Peace eternal, the peace deserved by the truly righteous, not self-righteous, but righteous of heart and soul and spirit, who through their deeds, their words, and their works makes the world a little more right. Amen. Please be seated.
If I could have the pallbearers, please. You go this side. The pews, please. Thank you. Right up front.
And do you have time for the minions each night?
Right up there.
And where will it be? I wish to announce that there will be minions each evening this week at Andy's home at 7:30 p.m.
I'll ask you to rise once more, please.